Okay, JB.
Yeah.
Blink 3 times if you're okay. See? He's not a hostage.
I'm free.
People think that, all the social media activity this summer, that you've just been held hostage to me just going ballistic on social media and everything, JB.
Yeah.
You're fine. We're fine.
I think so. I mean, some people might think we're a little, bit off, but hey,
Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Was that the old thing?
I think it's if you've been the hero long enough, eventually you become the villain. This is season 18 of In the Huddle, the D3FB Huddle.
I've been doing this stuff for 30 years. You realize that come October?
Yeah, I mean, I've been following D3 football since longer than 30 years. So, yeah, this is a long time coming. I got some gray hairs to prove it.
You and me both. I just get them shaved off on Fridays.
Smart move.
Well, we'll talk about the summer a little bit here and some of the back and forth, but we'll make you wait for that. We got to talk about football first. We've been waiting to talk about football forever, it feels like.
It's been a long off season, yeah.
Yep. So we assume this is debuting sometime the week after we're actually shooting it, so it might be a little bit of old info by the time it gets out there. It happens. Last time I left here, coaching changes are happening as I left your driveway. Okay, so
yeah, and there's still, I think, a few open jobs.
Interims.
More interims than I think we saw in previous years, but yeah.
But we'll see a little bit more of that. We'll see a whole lot of things coming up here. We'll see a new intro right now because this is season 18 of In the Huddle. Taped up. We'll get a new sign. We promise when we're hitting the road. So yeah, season 18 here. We got a lot to go over. We're going to start here like we normally start our preseason show, our first one, which is we're going to talk about Stag Bowl. The Stag Bowl is kind of done and gone, but there it is right there.
Yeah.
You had a good time in Houston?
Yeah, I had to pay for this merch. You don't get this stuff for free.
Especially if you're us.
Yeah. But I needed it that night because it went from 70-something before the game to like 30-something by the time it was over. I was freezing.
It was 30 degrees the next morning when I left for the airport. Luckily got out of Dodge in time.
Dodged a bullet.
Yeah, because a lot of people did not get out very easily that night. Listen, Stag Bowl, what was it, 51 officially? 41-25 score. North Central beating Mount Union, back and forth game. Key moment was, of course, at the just before halftime.
Yeah.
The end of the half, Mount Union had a chance to score at least a field goal, maybe a touchdown, and it ended up running out of time trying to get the field goal unit on. That seemed to really take the wind out of the team's sails. And North Central came back in that second half and really kind of put their foot on the accelerator. Luke Lannon, obviously most outstanding player in that Stag Bowl, leaves 2-2 in the Stag Bowl. But to say that, he's just 500 in the Stag Bowl. No, he's 500 in the Stag Bowl at 2-2. He got there every year he played.
That's amazing.
Unbelievable job by him. He is still trying to find a home in football. He was with the
Arlington Renegades
for
a little bit. Yeah, he was a backup quarterback or third stringer for them. So,
our friend Zach Vargas got a chance to interview him when he was down in Texas, and very gracious. Gave a lot of time to Zach. Zach will be somebody who will join us during the season, as will Riley Conley, our kind of Texas connections down there. They'll be contributors throughout the season for us as well, and we'll maybe pop in their podcast when it comes down to that. But back to the North Central Mount Union game. What we kind of begin to wonder watching that game, seeing the final results, what happens this year for both teams? First, the question inevitably becomes, will we get a rematch?
Yeah.
And to do that, they have to have some good quarterbacks. The question really has become, who's the quarterbacks for these teams?
Yeah. No, I was actually looking at that before, and I have conveniently located So when we were there, we were given these cards that were basically the the starting lineups. And if you look at Mount Union, both TJ DeShields and Noah Bourdry are gone.
Bourdry's in.
Sorry.
Yep, he's at Adrian. Yep.
Yeah, so he went to Adrian. Mount Union's offense lost about 5 or 6 guys, including Tyler Echeverry, who's here from. He's originally from Florida. He's a Tampa area guy. On defense, they lost Rossi Moore. They lost a few others. Yeah, you look at North Central. They lost most of their offensive, 4 or 5 starters on the offensive line.
Yep.
They lost Luke Lennon, but there's this guy Calvin Lavery, who's like a 6'5", 230-something pound. Maybe he's 220 or a little smaller than that, but it's D3, right? But anyway, so he's competing for the chance of starting quarterback. But they've also had some guys transfer in from places as far like Oklahoma State. So the D1 guys, FCS guys, I think another Division II player transferred from Roosevelt maybe in Chicago. So there's going to be a quarterback competition to see who's going to be the successor to Luke Lennon. My money might be on Calvin just because he knows the system, but time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, you look, Jack Rummel is still there, probably as wide receiver. He was a sophomore last year. Grant McAtee was a freshman. I mean,
no Joe Sacco, he's gone.
Yeah,
but you've got Coleman back, right?
Yeah, Charles Coleman should be back.
Yeah, he scored a touchdown.
It's one of those scenarios where this team has become kind of the garden variety success story in Division III. 5 straight Stag Bowls it is now. When you go back to 2019, 2020 obviously.
Record overall. Yeah.
2020 was no Stag Bowl. So 2019, 2021 through 2024. Brock Rudder was the QB1 that got it done in 2019.
Beat Whitewater pretty handily. Yeah.
Yep. And then when you look at Luke Lannon's record, 2-2 as we said. But long story short goes, does a quarterback come and get installed and automatically win for this team now because they are just retooling, getting the transfers they need and everything else? I don't know, but they remind me a lot of a Mount Union from back in the 2000s.
Yeah, true.
Especially the early 2000s, where the quarterback would just go out there, shine, leave, the next one comes in.
Next man up.
Yep, next man up all the time.
Yeah.
They kind of are the Mount Union of the 2020s now. Is North Central. So we got to see the matchup again in the Stag Bowl this time last year. Do we see it again? If you had to stand here right now and tell me.
Well, we've seen it 2 of the last 3 years, so I think there's a very good chance, statistically speaking, that we probably will. Mount Union will probably be on the right side of the bracket. North Central will be on the left side. And so things will sort of shake out. We'll get into the whole MPI thing and the 40 teams and all that. But I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. But maybe, we did get some surprises in 2024, maybe not all the way to the championship game. And we definitely got a big surprise in 2023. We were there in Salem and saw it unfold right before our eyes. And that changed everything in D3 in many ways. And we've seen that in talking to people on the road and media days and all this stuff. So we'll see. I mean, I think the odds are that there's a good chance that they would have a rematch. But with all the question marks of Mount Union, they could get knocked off. Honestly, I thought when you look back, if it wasn't for a few play calls in the second quarter where Hopkins got a little conservative, they could have won that game. Because in the second half, Mount Union secondary could not cover any of the Hopkins receivers. But they got in a little bit of a hole and just were constantly playing catch up. Maybe there would have been a different outcome if they had played a little more aggressively in the first half.
We will find out. If I had to guess right now, I'm going to say no. I think at least one of the 2 will be back. It's just tough to have the rematch the way we saw with Whitewater and Mount Union. How many times in a row?
6 or something.
7, I want to say, or something like whatever it was back when. But let's talk about here. We mentioned Mount Union and struggling to get back, but week 1 is going to prove a lot about who they are, I think. And let's talk about some national week 1 big matchups. Region 1 for me, the biggest game is Springfield at Western New England. If you remember last year, Western New England the pinch and saw game, Western New England almost beat Springfield in that game at Springfield, which is right down the street from each
across the road, Eldon Street or whatever.
Well, down Eldon, you take a right and all that stuff. Then Springfield never looked back for the rest of the season until their North Central game, essentially. Western New England, rivalry game, always kind of right there, it feels like. Jason LeBeau and company. That's a tough one to start with, but it proves moxie for whoever wins it, I think, ultimately. We saw it last year that way.
Yeah, and that's always a great matchup. For me, I think Mass Dartmouth opening on the road at Salve Regina. Now, the Seahawks had a little bit of a down year last year, but they're a tough team, kind of on offense and defense. There were a couple other games. Hampton-Sydney versus Del Val in week 1 is kind of an interesting, kind of cross-regional matchup. You've got Montclair State going to play the Merchant Marine on Friday night. So that'll be a cool one. Tune in to hear our buddy Jaden Daly on the call for that one in Friday in New York. And then, we've got SUNY Maritime and Mass Maritime. I think that's not the Cranberry Bowl. That's with Bridgewater State. This is another one of those, I think, kind of Maritime Bowl games that they have in the rivalry. So, we'll see.
More on Maritime in a moment, actually, when we get the coaching discussion. But playing good games. But that pinch and saw game to me is kind of the class of the Region 1 national watch type games right now.
Fair enough.
Region 2, I've got 2 right in the southern tier of New York, essentially. Grove City at Cortland, Johns Hopkins at Ithaca. I might as well say now, I've been to Johns Hopkins versus Ithaca 2 years running, so the game we will be going to is Grove City at Cortland this year to get a little variation in this. Not to say that Johns Hopkins Ithaca won't be a huge game, but that Grove City Cortland game we've actually had circled for a couple seasons now, the postseason of 2023 and into now, because that was a huge game in the playoffs during Cortland's run to the championship. Coach Blue's first game as head coach for Cortland. Grove City taking on one of the highest profile games in an out-of-conference situation in quite some time. They didn't have an out-of-conference game for 2 years, don't forget.
Or for longer than.
Well, the Pac for 2 years had that situation. But I can't remember this level of high-profile game for them. We did see Westminster play Mount Union one year right after COVID. So we've seen it happen in the Pac, but this is a special game for them. So we will be going to Cortland for that one. Anything else you want to just point out quickly in Region 2? But these are the class national games, in my opinion, for Region 2.
One of the games that sort of Moravian-Muhlenberg on Friday night. It's a big game for both Landmark and this is basically an old Centennial rivalry between, kind of crosstown rivals.
We'll see you there.
Yeah, most likely. And then Kings versus Wilkes, the old Mayor's Cup.
We'll see you there.
There's a mayor, maybe he needs to hand out the Mayor's Cup. We'll see. There's a rematch of one of the Open Doors Bowls between Marietta and Westminster on Thursday night, which is pretty cool too. And then Case Western versus Rowan is a really interesting game, I think.
I think Case has got some noise they'll be making in the Pac this year, but I'm going to learn real fast if I'm off my rocker. And Rowan last year,
Coach Hurley's got something going on there, and I think that the props are just going to keep getting better. So
just because a team loses that game doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. I think they're both very good teams.
Absolutely.
So we'll just see who's the better of those two in that game ultimately. So
absolutely.
I'm looking forward to that. Let's go Region 3. I've got 3 games I'm kind of highlighting. Dickinson, Randolph-Macon on a Friday night. I think that's a good game because, again, Randolph-Macon has just been sticking around and sticking around and sticking around.
They've won like 39, so they've only lost like 3 or 4 games in the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, they've had an incredible run. I mean, they're right up there with the North Centrals and Mount Unions as far as like just win-loss records.
Then also, staying in the ODAC for a second, Salisbury at Washington and Lee. Salisbury after the year they had, it's going to be interesting to see if they can continue that run. No pun intended.
I'm really curious. Salisbury lost their entire starting offensive line. Now their quarterback is back, and he was phenomenal.
A freshman phenom last year.
He was great, but they need to make sure that they're protecting this guy, and so I'm really interested to see how the Seagulls look on the line in the first couple weeks of the season.
That's why I'm highlighting that game. Also, Trinity at Texas Lutheran. Trinity last year in the Ryan Back era of quarterbacking struggled in that game and lost it ultimately. That's what led to TLU getting into the playoffs from the SCAC despite no automatic bid. They got in through Pool C. So, this game I think has some real bearing. Trinity is becoming a force to be reckoned with in Texas regularly now. It's not that they aren't or haven't been. It's just now they're becoming a perennial name down there because of all their success, or close calls, or whatever you want to call it, between them and Mayor Hardin-Baylor and them and Hardin-Simmons over the last few years. And so Coach Urban has got something going on down there. But also, this is going to be a very emotional season for them as Coach Lytle and his family deal with the loss of Kellyanne during the floods. We're not going to go too deeply into that. You've seen our discussion on it, and fundraising attempt and everything else. We send our love to everybody down in the San Antonio area that were affected by that specifically, or the loss of a student there, or just everything that happened related to those floods. It's just terrible, but the emotion that's going to come with this season will be interesting to watch how Trinity responds to it. You can go one of two ways usually with emotion like that. Usually your head's out of the game, or you just play even a headier game ultimately throughout the season. We'll see. Region 3, I think that's kind of comprehensive.
Well, the one game that I have circled is probably Huntington versus Barry.
Oh yeah,
I think Huntington is maybe on the way back. They did not win the USA South last season. It's been a while since that's happened. And Barry seems like, even without Brandon Cade coming back, I don't know, they might be the potential favorite to win the SAA. We'll see. I know Trinity and other teams are going to have something to say about that. But how this game goes, once it's sort of similar to that other game we talked about, Case Western and Rowan. Like, the loser of this game's season isn't over, but the winner will definitely be will be buoyed by the fact that there's a good chance that whoever loses is still going to end the season with maybe 1 or 2 losses, and that will help them in the MPI BS we'll get into later.
I just wish the MPI had more respect for scheduling that way, so that your out-of-conference games like these would be more embraced. Ultimately, even if you lose the game, that's the key. Losing a good game doesn't do much for you at all in the MPI equation. Winning a not-so-hot game actually technically has a little bit more emphasis placed on it. Region 4, Wheaton, Mount Union. And again, Wheaton's a Region 5 team, but we call it based on the home team when we're doing the out-of-conference situation. Clearly, this is a big game. Clearly, Wheaton is trying to prove that they were worthy of a playoff spot that they didn't get last year. We had their head coach on. We had a lot of discussion, or most watched show ever, where we talked about River Falls and Wheaton with coaches and John Carroll, who did get into.
They settled on a very close Isthmus Bowl game that they should have won by more, but they kind of let Stout creep back in there at the end, and they won 35-32 and got a trophy out of it, but it was a little close for comfort.
Yep, absolutely. But here's the thing. Wheaton is a test for Mount Union out of the gate. This is not normal for us to see Mount Union playing this level.
This isn't Ferrum.
No, it's not. Or Defiance.
Sorry guys.
Or Defiance for how many years?
Right.
Well, and now they have to have a couple out-of-conference games because John Carroll moving over to the NCAC. But this is good, I think, for Mount Union. They need this at the top of the season to see who they are. Now, you could lose a game like this and really begin to scratch your head about who you are. But obviously the favorite's going to be Mount Union. Okay, Wheaton, to see them play somebody other than North Central as their first big game, it's big for us to see too. Although Wheaton's played some heady opponents along the way too.
They played Oshkosh and some teams like that. So they've tested themselves.
So I do like their philosophy generally. North Central's philosophy has been questioned sometimes, but they had Aurora last year, so at least they did come out strong with that game to start.
Matchup,
But in week 1, specifically focused on week 1 here, this Wheaton Mount Union game is one of the highlight games of the whole week for national issues or thoughts here. Region 4 wise, not much else that's jumping out.
Region 5 or 4 wise, I think. Maybe Mount St. Joe's versus Rose-Hulman. DePaul, looks like I got a typo on that one. Baldwin Wallace versus Wittenberg is interesting to me. I have a feeling now with John Carroll being out, maybe the Yellow Jackets are the potential second place team. We'll get into more of that later.
Okay, Region 5. I got a few games, or a couple games actually I picked out here. Claremont Mudscripts, Lake Forest in Chandler, Arizona. The first time we're having a D3 game in Arizona that we're aware of. Coach Catanzaro has made that a big place for.
Coach Cat will be on the sidelines. You know.
How you doing, Cat? Yep, exactly. But long story short, it's a big game for them with where the recruiting grounds have been. He's not shy about the fact that he goes down to Arizona quite often to recruit and does a good job at it, for that matter.
Yeah,
and
good
so
high school football there.
Yep. And so they will be playing the game at the high school stadium down there in Chandler. And I know he's excited about it. I had some lunch with him when he was in upstate New York about a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
And he's definitely thrilled, let's just put it that way, that he will be able to bring college football in the Division III style to the state of Arizona.
First time ever. That's pretty cool.
Yep. Also, though, Platteville at Aurora. Okay, so Aurora, give them credit here. They don't fall down early with these games. North Central last year, early in the season, and now Platteville at
defending
Aurora.
WIAC champs. Although they didn't go far in the playoffs, they did win 9 games, or maybe 10, I guess, if you include, I think, their first round. But yeah, so that's a great matchup there. Carnegie Mellon going to Chicago is interesting. And then I think Monmouth versus Wartburg is really interesting, as Monmouth has been picked by the coaches to be the #1 team in the Midwest Conference. We'll see about that. I also like Wabash versus St. Norbert. Both were bowl teams last year. I think Wabash played, I think, in one of the Open Doors Bowl games, and St. Norbert played, I believe, in the Lakefront Bowl, which is, I think, coming back. There was a little question mark there if it was going to.
They're working on it.
Yeah, they're working on it. Hopefully they'll keep it going, because I think that's great for those conferences and those kids. But those are some other things in Region 5 that kind of jump out.
Region 6, Oshkosh Linfield.
Yeah, there might be other people out there that might shout out Alma versus River Falls.
There's another show that'll tell you a lot about that.
We'll
just say it's a big game and watch the other show for a lot more on that one.
Exactly.
Somebody might wear a kilt, I understand. It'll be interesting.
There we go. Yeah.
So go ahead.
Hardin-Simmons versus Chapman. I mean, the Cowboys are going to giddy up and go to Southern California. I think they'll be heavily favored in that one, but it's kind of an interesting red-eye game if you stay up till 10 o'clock on that Saturday night of Week 1.
Something else out there, for sure. But that's kind of the round of national games in Week 1 that we want to call your attention to. There's a lot more to come in Weeks 2 and 3 for a lot of conferences out there in other big out-of-conference games. And, points to a lot of these came together late. Despite knowing that NPI screws you, basically, in the, overscheduling department, if you lose those games again, you're just not going to get the benefit you should from that scheduling. Long story short is that a lot of these teams did it. Now, some of it's by necessity, because certain teams just don't want to play the good teams. So now that's leaving only good versus good to even happen. I don't know if Wheaton Mount Union was a late ad or not. I think it may have been later than most.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that stood out, our buddy Carlo Dingo Talks, coaches series, one of the things that drives coaches nuts, among other things, is scheduling. It's always a challenge, and especially in this MPI thing. I think we said this in last year's preseason show. It's great to schedule these challenging games, but you better win.
Yeah. Otherwise, you get no benefit.
Yeah. One or basically 2 losses puts you on the bubble. I mean, we saw some pretty unique things last year where we had certain conferences with tiebreakers that got multiple 2-loss teams in. Maybe that's one of the positive benefits of the MPI system. I don't know. I'm sure teams like Wheaton would have been like, hey guys, come on, we're better than Texas Lutheran, we're better than half the some of these other teams.
NPI will not be changing this year, the calculation for Formula 4.
No change to those dials, folks.
One of the things that as you start to play with it when you get a little extra time, and I did that recently because I was trying to figure out how to reverse engineer it a little bit.
Good for you. I would never spend a second even.
But it's so counterintuitive. For instance, there's a 5-win minimum. Okay, so first off, the top teams are being judged on their best 5 games or their best 5 opponents. Okay, great. I don't know how we're judging.
Last
teams.
I checked, they play 10 games in the regular season. But
yeah, exactly.
I guess only 5 count that.
Okay, but let's say then you get 1.1 ratio for an away win or a home loss, or 0.9 on a home win or an away loss. Here's what ends up happening, though. Let's say a team has the first 5 games. and it's like 1.1, 1.1, 0.9, 0.9, 0.9. Well, that's 4.9, right? So you need 5 wins. So what do? And the guys at D3 Datacast confirmed this for me, so thank you to them, because I was a little off on how we came up with certain numbers. You count the 6th win, the one that's next in line, you count it 0.1 times just to get to 5.0. It's like, what are we doing here? I mean, it's a little bit of mathematical twister, which is fun for a party game, but it's not really fun for how to determine who your best teams are for Pool C bids and seeding and everything else. But I mean, it's so counterintuitive. And as you said, you play 9 or 10 games, maybe 8 or 7, depending on if you're Mary Hardin Baylor playing out of division games or something like that. But still, you play more than 5 games. These games should all be counting. And in some way, shape, or form, I think margin of victory needs to be taken into account. Others agree with me on this. Coaches agree with me.
To a certain extent. I think maybe up to
32 or 28 or something like that.
28 is probably the right number.
It depends on if you look at a possession as 8 points or 7 points in college football, in the multiple and all that. But okay, still, something needs to happen.
24, just call it.
24, yeah, okay. I could see that one actually. It's not bad.
Yeah.
Look at him writing it as we go along here. But no, we need to do something here that we're not basketball, we're not baseball. We don't have 20 plus games that we can, still count 12 wins or whatever the minimum is in those games. We are football, and counting 5 games to determine who you are is asinine.
Yeah.
Last year, the numbers looked okay to a lot of people because things didn't seem too out of whack, though the teams on the bubble might disagree that didn't make it.
Yeah, well, there's always teams that are on the bubble and have legitimate beefs.
But as they said at our Landmark Media Day moderation that we had done, and thanks again to Katie Bolovich for inviting us to do so, and the Landmark coaches. But, because we went to 40 and had the extra at-larges, they're willing to tolerate NPI. But for the casual fan that believes that getting into the playoffs matters in terms of determining who you are at the end of the day, or getting your recruiting base to believe in you and everything else, I think that's where you start getting into the danger zone, because North Central in 2019 was the last team in.
Yeah, that's crazy when you think about it, right? Like they may have just been bumped off and like never had that first national championship game,
possibly,
or run or whatever. Yeah.
And ask Mount Union how that all went in 2019 and everything else. So long story short is that it does still matter. At-larges are the best teams that just for whatever reason didn't make it, and some of them are worth that. Not always, but you still want to make sure you get the right teams in for the right reasons. And that's why I really would like to see NPI fixed in a major way coming next year, because it won't happen this year. We know that already. Speaking about rules of NPI, let's talk about rules of college football. Okay. And we were joined and are bringing to you Stuart Hindman, our friend from the Landmark and Centennial Conferences, as an official. Let's introduce him right now in this video. Glad to have Stu Hindman with us. And Stu, first off, introduce yourself to folks that may not know who you are. They've probably seen you if they've watched Stag Bowl or 2 or 3 or 4 out there. But who are you, sir?
Thank you. So my name is Stuart Hindman. I am a referee in the Centennial and Landmark Conferences. I've been working in the Centennial Conference since 2019. And then when the Landmark Conference formed football in 2023, my association took over the Landmark. So I've been a college football official since 2014. I live in the DC area, but I joined the Centennial Conference football officials in 2019 and have been there ever since.
And a new dad, actually. Congratulations to you, Stu. It looks like you're having a good time in that role.
You don't look tired enough, so I don't know. You must be doing something right.
I owe my wife everything for that. She's
good answer.
Great, but yes. Thank you guys.
Stu, we brought you on because we want to talk about 2025 rule changes now in D3 football, especially. Most of these are universal rule changes, obviously, but there may be some stuff that might be more particular to D3, so we'll kind of lean on you here. But let's talk about D3 high-level rule changes that are going to really affect the game this season. Go ahead with your first one.
So first I'll say the way rule changes are handled at NCAA for football is they are handled for all divisions. There's something called the Playing Rules Oversight Panel. They meet in the off-season and they approve all rule changes. And those rule changes are applicable all the way from FBS down to Division III. We did see for the first time in 2023 a bifurcation of the rules where Division I approved a rule, but Division III did not. That was where Division I approved the implementation of the new 2-minute timeout and no longer stopping the clock on first downs prior to the 2-minute timeout. That change did not go into effect for Division III until 2024. But that was really the first time where we've ever seen a differentiation in rules between Divisions 1, 2, and 3. We see a little bit this year that I can get into, but otherwise the rule changes this year, they are applicable for all divisions of football.
So let's jump in. What's your first one that you really want to talk about here that could affect the game?
Sure. So the first one that comes in has been a point of emphasis from the NCAA, and it involves feigning injuries. There has been a concern over the last few years about teams gaming an advantage, especially when time is critical under 2 minutes in the second and fourth quarter, that a team might fake an injury in order to gain an advantage on time, because anytime there's an injury on the field, the officials stop the clock. Team personnel come out and assess the player. It could be a slight delay, and that could allow a team to essentially get a free timeout. So what the change this year is if at any time after the ball is spotted by the official, so you'll see either the referee, the umpire, or the center judge place the ball down, and then a player goes down with an apparent injury, we automatically charge the team a timeout, one of their 3 timeouts allotted in that half. If that same situation happens and the team is out of timeouts, the team will be assessed a 5-yard delay of game penalty. Exactly. We're going to go with the delay of game penalty. It's meant to ensure that players and coaches do not game the system. Is this a pervasive issue? Not necessarily, but it has happened. So the rule change came in to basically make sure that this doesn't cause an unfair advantage. The NCAA was very clear that injuries are taken very seriously, and then if at any time an official thinks a player appears as injured, we will shut the game down. And it's not meant to put a burden on the officials to decide, is this a legitimate injury, is this not? Which is why the demarcation is once the ball is spotted and down, that's where the new rule comes in.
Okay, well, that one we did see, I think, in D1 questioned a little bit last year too, so I'm not surprised by that one, to say the least. What else do we have that might be something that folks in D3 will feel effects of during this season?
So one of the other changes that came in this year was about the number of timeouts that a team can have when you hit extra periods. Normally if a game ends tied and we go into overtime or extra periods, previously each team got 1 timeout for each overtime period. So if we went 7 overtime periods, you would get 7 timeouts. So that change came in this year where a team will get 1 timeout for the first overtime, 1 timeout for the second overtime. But if we hit the third overtime and going forward, each team only has 1 timeout for as long as that game continues. And the reason that might come into play, specifically if a conference is using sideline replay where a coach has to initiate a challenge, a coach can only initiate a challenge if they have a timeout. So let's say we're in the 5th overtime and a team used their one overtime timeout in the 3rd overtime period. They can't challenge something in subsequent overtime periods. So it could come into play in a pretty significant way.
Stu, you talked about a little bit of the instant replay potential in the 5th overtime, but there's instant replay possibly throughout a game in certain conferences this season, more conferences than last year. To the degree you can, let's identify for the Centennial and Landmark folks, especially since that's your specialty, what we'll be seeing in instant replay this year. How did it go last year, and what changes are we going to see this year?
Sure. So that was another rule change that came in 2024, where it was permissive for Divisions 2 and Divisions 3 to implement replay in a manner that was consistent with Division 1, but without the replay official in the press box making the final decision. The referee on the field would go over to the side and would basically be given a tablet and would make the decision. Frank, I know you were at one of our games last year, Muhlenberger Sinus, where we had, I believe we had 2 reviews during that game, and so you sort of got to see how it happened. The Landmark Conference this year did vote to approve replay, so both the Centennial and the Landmark will be using sideline replay this year. So it's going to be, it's good for the game. I think it's a good way that we can change calls if something is obviously wrong. It's not going to be the same as Division 1, where we don't have 5, 6, 7, 8, sometimes 12 cameras. We usually have 2 or sometimes 3 angles that we have to rely on. But I think overall it went very well last year. The teams were very pleased with it. Coaches were very eager to use their challenge. They did not have a challenge flag. There were no red flags that were flying in. But coaches would call a timeout. We would go over there. We would ask them what element of the play they wanted to challenge, and we would review it. The best part about the instant review process is any foul that is called targeting on the field is instantly reviewed and immediately reviewed. A coach does not have to challenge it. If there is a penalty that is called on the field for targeting, it is instantly reviewed. So that allows us to immediately review it, and if we determine that we cannot confirm all elements of the targeting foul, which is the exact same standard that Division 1 uses, that player is immediately returned to the game and they are not disqualified. So that's where it really shows its benefit. And that's actually one of the rule changes this year. Normally in previous years, when a referee makes a decision, if you've heard any number of referees go into a review, they'll come out and say the ruling on the field is confirmed, the ruling on the field stands, or the referee would then go into an announcement that say after further review it's been determined, and then go into a quick description. So this year the rule changes. You will no longer hear confirmed or stands. You will only hear the ruling on the field is upheld, or the ruling on the field, and then we go into a quick decision or a quick description of how the ruling on the field is going to be changed. So you will no longer hear confirmed or stands. It will merely be upheld, or you'll hear that the referee is changing the ruling on the field.
So getting ready for this season, I imagine we might see you in Cleveland, Ohio. I mean, is there like special ref uniforms if it's either 50 degrees versus maybe 2 below? I've seen Frank frozen, on the sidelines for like the Hopkins Mount Union game last year in the playoffs. I mean, I imagine through the course of the season, you see it all, right? Like really hot in week 1 and week 2 until finally, you're really bundling up through the playoffs. Is there a game plan you have for that, or sort of like different wardrobes you have as the season progresses?
Absolutely. So, one of the nice things about being in the Mid-Atlantic is we get to experience all seasons. So it will likely be 80, 90 degrees, in the early season. And then we'll get a nice fall. And then, yes, there have been some very cold games at the end of the season. I've been very fortunate to work in December and January several times. And the one thing that has saved my life is layers. There are many different referee uniforms. There are cold weather shirts. There are warm weather pants. There are any type of underneath garments that we can wear that will keep us warm. Some officials will actually wear heated vests.
I need to get those for Ohio.
Heated socks. I will tell you the coldest I've ever been was when I was at Mount Union for the semifinal in 22, where it was about 40 degrees and misting, and it was cold. But the adrenaline just keeps you going. We can dress as warm as we want. We also still want to be able to move and still want to be able to function and officiate the game properly. But technology has come a long way in the last several years that there are many garments we can wear to keep us warm, but it is certainly something that we keep in mind.
And one other quick question. So I think you were at the game, if not, I mean, your colleagues, but was the Muhlenberg, blocked field goal that hit off somebody's butt and then got returned in for a touchdown to clinch a conference championship
2 years ago?
The craziest thing that you've seen as an official, or are there other games where you've seen some wacky stuff happen like that?
So yes, that was my crew. I was there. Frank, you were there, standing under the uprights, I believe. That is the craziest play I've ever seen in a game, and I've seen some crazy plays, but that one where it just went. The kicker kicked it straight into the defensive line. It fell into the lap of Will Leger, and he just found the corner, and he had nothing but green pastures in the end zone in front of him. It's one of those plays where we as officials, we may talk about in pregame, and we may discuss how are we going to handle a broken field goal? How are we going to handle when something breaks down? Sometimes we just can't plan for everything, and that's when our fundamentals kick in. That play was actually featured on, it made ESPN SportsCenter top 10 that week. It actually was featured in Steve Shaw, the national coordinator's training tape that week as an excellent example of what to do when a play breaks down. And we really we officiated the play in front of us. The crew did exactly what they should have done. But to answer your question, yes, that is the craziest play I've ever seen in a game.
I think it is the craziest play I've ever seen. And we've been doing this for
a few years.
A long time.
Stu, any last thoughts here? Any last rule changes that might be a little bit of more minor sense that you want to call out? Take us out here with any last thoughts that you have for this 2025 season that's just about ready to begin.
If you guys saw in a NFL preseason game, I believe last weekend, there was a substitute player who was not playing, who was run into by an official, or I believe the official ran into CD Lamb of the Cowboys. So the area that's called the white is exclusively reserved for the officials while the ball is live. And there are rules that say no player, non-player, substitute, team personnel shall be in that area while the play is live, specifically for that reason, to allow the officials to have our area. So there actually was a rule change this year that allows us to assess an unsportsmanlike conduct foul directly on the individual that we run into. So in prior years, if an official makes contact with a player or coach or team personnel on the sideline, it would be a team unsportsmanlike conduct. They'd be assessed 15 yards, and it would just be assessed to the team. No player gets what's called a counter towards potential ejection. This year, if we can identify the individual, whether it's the head coach, an assistant coach, we know a specific player, that player themselves gets the unsportsmanlike conduct foul, and that is a counter. So if they get two of those, they are ejected from the game. So it's really a testament to the teams to really get back. And you'll see some coaches that actually have that are called get back coaches that will pull back the head coach to get out of our way. But I thought that one was really timely, and that's exactly the reason why we have this rule, is so that officials, it's for protection of the officials, it's for the protection of the players.
Yeah, I think we saw that a little bit in Houston, to be honest, because of the soccer pitch setup, and I think that there was either some media members or people that are just sort of ancillary fans that got field access who really weren't aware of that rule, and so there could have been some
there were no lines anywhere outside the player's box periphery, and we saw the goal line official basically in a pool of media folk. And it was not exactly the best scenario down there.
Sparkle Man had to intervene to tell those people to back off, let these refs do their job.
My inner
Stuart I was the alternate on that game, so I was there on the sideline. I was going up and down. I had to run around a lot of people when I didn't. I was the referee at the Stag Bowl in 21. A lot of ancillary people on the sideline. So we really have to be cognizant of who's around us so we don't trip and injure ourselves.
Absolutely.
Stu, thanks for joining us. We're excited to have the 2025 season begin here. We're excited to see you and your crew in action. One thing I'll say is wherever you show up, it's a top-level officiated scenario because of your experience and your crew's experience. So we appreciate you, and we appreciate the time that you took to help explain some of these rule changes for 2025. Thanks again.
Of course. Thanks, Frank. Thanks, JB.
Thanks to Stu for his time, and it's not an easy job, obviously. But you and I got to sit down with their coordinator officials for the Landmark and Centennial, and he was really interesting to talk to because they don't pay attention to the whole landscape like that.
No, they don't.
They you know, the who's doing what and how stuff. They focus on these rules. They focus on making sure they deliver a good game no matter who is in front of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they want to do the top level teams because it just says who they are.
Yeah,
but
sure.
they're not getting into the whole mix of it all.
No.
Coming into these games or these seasons even. They focus on what they are told to focus on. I'd say paid to do. But the pay isn't all that wonderful. It's something.
Yeah, it's not like you're an NFL ref pulling down, you know, $100,000 in plus a year or whatever.
It's a sacrifice, and you're leaving your family on Saturdays or Fridays every week, depending on what it is.
It's a long day.
So, but it speaks volumes, I think, to the guys that are in the stripes of how intent they are to make it a right thing. They don't want to walk away with that, I guess, insecurity feeling of, did I screw something up? Did I screw somebody's season over for the wrong reasons? It's one thing when the players do it themselves or the players do it themselves. It's another when the rules sort of get all out of whack or a missed call or something like that. And, Stu, you can see he's somebody that's studied up on it already. A lot of his colleagues are the same way. What are your thoughts?
No, I think, in certain ways it's a thankless job, right? The only time, it's sort of like being an offensive lineman, the only stat is like if you get called for holding, So I think, these people, put in a lot of time and effort. There's, a lot of education, kind of constant learning, and, and every year there's changes to the rule book, so you have to stay on top of that kind of thing. And we'll see. I mean, instant replay or sideline review is becoming more of a common thing even at this level. And so, I think if anything, you've got to give those guys credit for putting in the time, for traveling to the games, to trying to do the best job as they possibly can. They're not getting rich off of this. They just do it because they love it. In a way, I think this kind of sounds like something,
For the love of the game?
For the love of the game. You ever hear that one before? We want to do the best job we can, so I can kind of relate to what's going on with Stu and those guys.
Our last major segment, we're going to talk about coaches and the changes. Now,
I got one more segment for you, Frank.
You got one more segment? Uh-oh, I'm a little scared after that.
Yeah. Well, let's do the coaching changes first.
Let's go there because I think it's more important probably at the end of the day. Oh, I know what it is. Questions and answers. I forgot about that one. Okay.
Man.
Yep, good point. But first, coaches. Okay. A lot of changes. I was here in February, and like I said, Ed Raby's situation developed. Coach Blue, we got an interview with him right afterwards. So we got a show in after the show.
The show after the show, right?
But we had a lot of changes into March, then April, May, June, even a July change. Are you kidding me? I mean, this is unheard of, some of these changes. Yeah. So let's go through them briefly, the ones that we have not talked about on the show before. Go back to our last couple of shows if you want to see the ones from prior to that, from, let's say, November to February.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
In March, Laverne, Richard Sanchez becomes their head coach after a successful career as the coach and athletic director, or associate athletic director, I should say, of Cardinal Newman High School in Santa Rosa. He was 37-11 as coach there, and so he's now going to be the head coach at Laverne. Then at Schreiner, a new head coach coming up for Schreiner. Even though they haven't even played football yet, realistically. Yeah. Keith Allen is going to be their head coach, it looks like now. He comes from the Kings Academy, a high school in West Palm Beach, Florida.
It's down 3 hours and a half around down the road.
2018-2019 National High School Federation State of Florida Football Coach of the Year. So good pedigree in high school football in Florida, which is something to say, definitely.
We play pretty good football down here.
Yep. Then in March 2025, Chuck Goldstein stepped down at Gallaudet to become their athletic director, I believe.
I think he took a position in the admissions department.
Admissions, excuse me. You're right. Good call.
Which is a pretty important deal these days.
Yep. He was replaced by Stephan LaFleurs, who is a child of deaf adults. He's from Parkview Baptist in Baton Rouge. That was his last job before
I think he was a Division I quarterback. Like, he played at Louisville. Like, he's a pretty accomplished both football player and coach, mostly FCS level. But
just about 666 of winning percentage as well in that time at Parkview Baptist. 2025 March, also, Austin Holter, a former Worcester quarterback, becomes their head coach at this point.
Okay.
So he was at Worcester High School since 2021 as a coach, and took on very well over there. Had some great success. He replaces Frank Calapretti, the former head coach. He resigned and took the athletic director and head football coach job at his high school alma mater, Cardinal Mooney High School, actually. So there you go. Best of luck to Frank on that.
Okay. Yeah.
Then again, in March 2025, they had to fill that SUNY Morrisville role after Ed Raby left for St. John Fisher. And that is, oh boy, forgive me, Eric.
Oh, good Lord.
Coach Eric, I think it's Jendrysen, or excuse me, Jendrysic. Yeah, Jendrysic, I believe. We're going to work on that.
That's a tough one.
Yep. But Coach Eric comes to Mooresville.
Coach J.
From the College of New Jersey, where he was an interim coach, head coach, and also for 8 seasons, some role at College of New Jersey as coaching. Yeah. And he was 6-4 at TCNJ at that point.
Built them
last
back.
year. Yep. So great job by him. 3-3 in the NJAC last year.
Yep.
April 2025, Justin Higgins left and went to RPI. He's a special teams coordinator for them, and we wish him the best of luck, obviously, with the Keystone drama that's still playing out right now a little bit. And Hugh Kerwin joined their staff in March 2020 and now takes over as head coach. So best of luck, Hugh, with that situation. One thing I'm going to say is that from the intelligence we get from Keystone, and we get plenty of it ever since the whole thing that happened last year, there's a point of view, even though there's an interesting backstory about who's taking the college over, that they are really, really looking to football right now to bring up the numbers, which is not an unusual story to hear, but it's almost a desperation scenario, it sounds like, to keep enrollment at a certain level at Keystone. Because remember, they need to have a minimum number of sports to be able to compete. Now, they're going to have what I understand to be a non-counting schedule, so that essentially the players don't have to use a year of eligibility, even if they play varsity type teams this year. This is a very interesting scenario. We got some good discussion from some folks on that. So if you see a game between Keystone and insert name here, and you see stats that are getting applied to the NCAA stat book, then that may not be accurate, maybe something that needs to be corrected, because what we understand is that they're trying to keep
a junior varsity schedule, basically. Scrimmage or whatever, it doesn't count.
So
the same.
We'll see how that pans out. That's our understanding of it. We'll see if that changes. Then in May of 2025, Joe Loth said hasta la vista to WestCon. He went to SouthCon as their head coach. And, you know, that's interesting, because remember, I had that conversation with him about Castleton and them and getting kicked out of the MASCAC essentially, and he was pretty pissed off at how Castleton got treated and how his team got treated. But they were on their way to the Landmark, and they are in there now. We got to meet Kevin Jones, their new head coach, interim head coach. And I'll tell you, I was very impressed by him. I think you were as well, about just his gravitas of you know, how he was handling the whole situation in the first place.
And for him, it was basically like, this is a best case scenario for him and his family. It's, you know, they've been established there. He's a couple of years older than us. He's been around and been coaching for a long time. Defensive-minded coach, DC, but you know, he has, I think, the right temperament. And what we saw, you know, with WestCon late last year, I mean, 9-2 season, they won an ACAC bowl. They were picked, I think, 4th in the Landmark, you know, kind of preseason poll. So a lot of people are not, they're kind of sleeping on the Wolves, but maybe not, you know.
Well, and then also in May, Bob Owens retired from Chapman, 18 seasons he had, and Casey Shine, the OC for 13 years, takes the interim title there. Kind of a late retirement by Coach Owens, but we wish him the best. He definitely had some good years recently with Chapman. Also, May 2025, Darren Lamker, who had been the coach at Augsburg for 5 seasons, resigned from the job. He was 21-20 in those 5 seasons. He'll be replaced by Kijan Ware, who was an assistant for Augsburg for 2 seasons. And he's a name that I do remember out there for a little bit. He was on the staff for Shippensburg University for a couple of years actually, and among other things.
Guy.
Yep. And then June 2025, Adam Gonzaga leaves Lake Forest and he was the defensive coordinator. He became the Lawrence head coach late in the ball game.
That's right.
That left Coach Katz scurrying to find a replacement for him, I believe.
Yeah, I'm sure you love that.
June 2025, mind you.
Yeah.
And then if you think that's something, July 2025, go watch the Left Hash Call. He'll tell you all about Anthony Trotta, who went from Union to SUNY Maritime, because July is the time to really hire a new head coach.
Yeah, why not? Season isn't started yet.
Jamel Ramsey, who was their coach last year, we brought them back a little bit. It felt like last year as well. He's stepping away from the position. He was elevated to the AD at Maritime.
Promotion.
But it sort of left an opening way too late in the ball game for most people's comfort zone. Trotta's there probably throwing his staff together to the degree he hasn't already and getting ready for the season. We'll see how it goes for him.
Okay.
Congratulations to him. And those are your coaching changes in Division III since March that we have record of here.
Yeah. And right now it's the middle of August, so hopefully there won't be any new job announcements.
God,
but you never
imagine
know.
that.
All right.
That'd be horrible.
So we put the call out to the D3 Nation, and we got some interesting questions. One from our pal Cuffy Cakes. Antoine.
He may have Cuffy capes too.
Yeah, he may have capes. He's a super Salisbury Seagull fan.
Yes, he is.
Antoine Cuff.
Antion, I think.
Antion, yeah. Sorry, man. But he was a former player for them and obviously a big fan. And so he was asking you and me for our sleepers, one per region. And there's been a couple of sleeper questions that we got.
Okay.
So
you start, I'll go second.
I did, so I actually, for the first time maybe ever, I did a little, research and planned out some answers here. I usually don't, have notes.
We're at 40 minutes right now, just to warn you, okay?
So for Region 1, my sleeper is Anna Maria, who's moved into the MASCAC. And even though they were a 500 team in what used to be the ECFC, the MASCAC lost WestCon. Now, I don't think the AMCATs are going to knock off the Corsairs for the championship, but everyone below WestCon was like a 500 or something team. Why can't the AMCATs, if they have a good recruiting class and they have a good season put together, they could compete? Maybe they go 8-2 or 9-1 and maybe sneak into something. So for Region 1, I think my pick is the AMCATs as the sleeper.
I'll go with Western New England. I think that
the Golden Bears.
They are going to. They always seem to catch fire at a certain point every few years. Every time we're ready to put them out the pasture, they're like, not so fast. And I think that game against Springfield could go their way at this point. I'm not saying it will, folks. I'm not going for the hot takes here. But I just watching what happened last year and sort of knowing the crux of that team for long enough, I think Western New England might be a team to watch here this year, especially knowing that Endicott, it's got some changes afoot for them. Clayton Rangi is, graduated. So that's going to be a game to watch, I think, later on in the season. But yeah, right now I'll say Western New England is my team, sleeper team possibly for this year.
Okay.
Region 2?
So this is maybe a little bit of a stretch, and I know that there's one coach who might object to me bringing this up because he likes to stay under the radar. They were a second place team in the Empire 8, but Brockport is getting a lot of kind of preseason prognosticative love, and they were 8-3 last season. So to say that they're a sleeper is a little, but I think people are expecting them to potentially go 10-0. They could be a top seeded team in the tournament if that happens, if they can beat Cortland, which no one has in the Empire 8 for a while. But if this is the year that something could change, I feel like this Golden Eagle team, and speaking of Golden, we were talking about Golden Bears, now we got Golden Eagles. They might be a semi-sleeper team out of Region 2.
Moravian. You look at the QB returning.
Yeah.
We talked to him.
Really good.
Jenkins, right? I think it is.
Yep.
And you look at his stats. You look at his progress last year. His efficiency went through the roof. I think that he's coming back for a reason this year, obviously, to finish unfinished work.
Yep.
Coach Long has done a great job sort of turning the corner that quickly with his team. we're going to see firsthand, I think, against Muhlenberg, just who they are.
Yeah.
And, Muhlenberg, we're
Friday
not
Night
sure
Lights.
who the quarterback's going to be there. Joe Repetti's obviously graduated off now.
Yep.
So I'm curious to see how that game plays out. Moravian normally is kind of like doormat city when it comes to that game, people think, coming into it. Not this year, not by any stretch of the imagination this year.
Yeah.
So Coach Long's done phenomenal in just a couple of short seasons to get that turned around. 3?
3, I'm going to go with Bellhaven.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so I think, they dropped off a little bit last year. I mean, they lost their coaching staff. But I feel like the USA South, especially with Maryville moving out into the SAA, that there could be some jostling happening there. So even if Bellhaven doesn't win the league, let's say Huntington does or something, if they're a 8-2 or 9-1 team, we'll see.
Hampton-Sydney. I think that it's time for them to come back, and we're going to find out early on, as you pointed out, in the game against, what was it, Del Valle in the first game?
Yep.
Who they are. And so I'm thinking that they're playing to win, per se. Okay, they're always playing to win, but with the way their scheduling is going here, I think that they're trying to be serious here about getting that early season competition to have a real chance to learn about themselves and win the ODAC this season. They'll have to get through Randolph-Macon eventually, though, to do that, and you know how that always goes. So there's 3. 4?
I already gave this one away earlier, but Baldwin Wallace and the OAC, John Carroll's gone. It's one less potential loss on their resume, I guess, considering the history there. But I think the Yellow Jackets might be a team that could squeak into the playoffs as a Pool C this year.
I mean, I don't want to lose you, so you might want to come this way a little bit.
Okay.
There you go. You just want to leave our shot here. He's not hostage, I swear to you. He's not. 4 for me is going to be Wabash. They've fallen out of the conversation a little bit with John Carroll coming into the NCAC and DePaul, sort of rolling the roost here. I think it's tough to call Wabash a sleeper, but I think that they are a sleeper in terms of the way people are looking at that conference right now. Never count out the Little Giants.
Yeah.
5?
5 I struggled with. I'm going to go with Co, just because of the ARC and how well Wartburg has been. But they've lost a lot to graduation these last 2 years. I mean, they've had some deep playoff runs and they've done well. Central, obviously, they had a Gallardi Trophy winner and a playoff team a few years ago. So maybe the Co-Hawks could be a team to kind of be a factor this year. We'll see.
I don't know if you can call him a sleeper, who I'm going to pick, but this wouldn't have been a perennial name, I think, a few years ago. Wartburg. I just think that they, without Owen Grover, got the job done for the most part last year, and I think that they build from there in what I will call a weird situation in their conference coming into this season. I don't feel any strength, of that level that wouldn't allow Wartburg to be that team here this year. So a lot of people have begun to write them off a little bit. To me, I think Wartburg is a team that's going to be right at that playoff precipice this year as well to win their Pool A bid possibly.
Yeah, and then in Region 6, I mean, you could pick any number of teams, but I kind of went with Minnesota Morris. I feel like in the UMAC, they could bounce back. They had some close calls against Northwestern of Minnesota, and so I don't know. That might be a little bit of a Hail Mary, but I went with them.
Tough one.
Yeah,
this is tough.
I mean, you could pick a sixth place team in the WIAC.
I do really go there.
Like once again, there's other shows that cover that conference pretty deeply,
or other formulas or
exactly
like
that will tell you that 5 of them belong in the top 10. But it's
5, just 5.
Yeah, maybe 6. I think Stout's going to drop off a little bit. We'll see.
Don't tell Jimmy Martin that.
Yeah, no, he would not like that. Come on. I'll get some kind of meme thrown at me or something. But I just feel like that league is just sort of beating each other up enough where,
Was it Puget Sound is the one that's been catching some attention in the Northwest Conference?
Well, maybe a little bit. Yeah, I mean, obviously Whitworth's has had a couple of good years. Linfield is expected to kind of run the table there. So yeah, maybe you could say Puget Sound as a sleeper. Yeah, that's fair.
It's tough to call any of the Wisconsin teams as sleepers.
The Loggers.
It's tough to call the MIAC, set of sleepers. So I'm going to go there. There you go.
Okay.
What else we got?
All right.
Got to be a little faster now. We're running out of time here.
Yeah. So this will be quick. This is also on the sleeper thing. Who are some sleeper-ish teams that could make a run to the national championship? This is from Josh Johnson at College Field Quest.
Hey, Josh.
Hopefully we'll see you either in Ohio, if not beforehand. Sleeper national championship games, teams, I mean...
I think losing the fifth-year scenario, honestly, has taken actually the sleeper out of it a little bit more. Some people think that it's going to make it wide open. I think it's going to be the perennials again.
The only thing I can throw out there, and this isn't much of a sleeper, but maybe Mary Hardin Baylor. I mean, they had an off year last year, but they had a good playoff run. If they bounce back, who knows how many more years they have left in D3? Maybe they could be. I mean, I know they won the championship.
You want a weird sleeper?
5 years ago or 4 years ago, but
Whitewater. I think Jace Rindle is going to be very uncomfortable in his coaching position if he doesn't produce this year in the way that it's expected. And so I actually see them bouncing back this year. He's a very adept head coach, obviously, has been around for long enough to know what's at stake and can handle the moment. I think Whitewater is going to take that run a little bit. So all this talk about La Crosse and Platteville and River Falls kind of being the class of it, if you take your eyes off Whitewater, I think you're crazy at this point.
Yep. This one comes from Tyler Keever about what do we think regarding the SCAC championship game weekend in Week 11 at the Little Rock War Memorial.
Well, Zach Vargas and Riley Conley are going to cover that, and there'll be multiple games.
All this reminds me of is when we did our COVID coverage season. And, obviously D3 games in huge D1 stadiums sometimes don't always work. But
that was a fun
But those
night.
SAA games were fantastic. There was 21 to 20 games. And I think for these guys, it's a nice reward for their hard work to play in a big stadium like that. And hopefully, because it's close to Texas and all that, where most of these teams are from, it'll get a good turnout.
Let me just be clear. Conferences should have a championship game under the current MPI structure.
Yeah,
okay?
No kidding.
Realistically, it helps you because it's taking away what would have been a bad game possibly in your conference schedule, and at least supplanting it with a really good game. And so if your team, is 9-1 or 8-1 rather, and loses the game at 8-2, at least the second loss is going to be a game that is going to, it's not going to help you great because it's a loss still, but at least it's something I think that is going to be strong enough to buoy most teams into a Pool C bid at a 2-loss scenario. And that's the key here. That's what you want to set yourself up for. If you lose twice and don't win your conference, you want that Pool C possibility still. That's what I think it sets you up for in these conferences that can do the championship game. So I like what the SCAC is doing.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to have to do this rapid fire, and I guess I'll just make you answer these because otherwise we'll be here forever.
Go.
Eric Bauman asked about under radar teams for each conference. There's like 28 conferences.
Oh my God.
So I'm going to try to quickly, I'll rattle off what's in Region 1 in each region. And then maybe just throw out a couple of names while they come to mind.
Let's go.
So we got the CNE now. We got the MAC, MASCAC, NASCAC, and NUMAC in Region 1.
So I have to go for each one of those conferences?
Well, maybe just pick one or two. Otherwise, we'll be here all day.
Yeah. Under radar, like I said, West New England is kind of an under radar. NESCAC-wise, Williams, I think, because I think that they were starting to get something together last year a little bit there, and it just obviously didn't come out in the wins column all the time.
All right. Region 2, we got the Centennial, Empire 8, Landmark, Liberty League, NJAC, and PAC.
Liberty League, I expect Rochester to begin or continue what they were beginning last year, which was a real resurgence. So Rochester for them. Also, like I said, Moravian in the Centennial.
Yeah, all right. In Region 3, we have the ASC, we have the ODAC, SAA, SCAC, and the USA South.
Barry from the SAA this year, I think they've got a chance to maybe overcome Trinity once and for all in this.
I'll throw in I think
Maryville, by the way.
Maryville is going to make something, interesting in the SAA.
Well, when your quarterback says he's leaving and comes back ultimately after a playoff season.
Yep, still got Grant Henderson, the All-American defensive back we had on the show last year.
Yep.
All right, let's try Region 4. We got the Heartland, we got Michigan, NCAC, and the OAC.
Baldwin Wallace in the OAC, like I said, Wabash in the NCAC, and again, that's tough to put there, but obviously it's not expected right now.
Yeah. Region 5, we have the ARC, CCIW, Midwest, and NACC.
Look, I'm going to give Wheaton a chance here. We kind of know what two of their losses may be, but if one of those turns out somehow, some way to be a win, sky's the limit. And you know, I said Wartburg earlier, so we'll just keep it at that in 5, 6.
Yeah, we got Minnesota, Northwest, Southern Cal, UMAC, WIAC.
Chapman could be interesting with the new coach as Owens leaves.
You know what I'd like to see, what I'm curious about, because we've kind of been following this and we've talked about him a lot. We've seen River Falls get a lot of hype.
Matt Walker.
Yeah. And then they don't always quite get over the hump, right? They got left out of the playoffs last year, which was a bummer for them. Is this they're bringing back a pretty strong team. I think a lot of people are expecting them to maybe, at least maybe win the conference or go to the playoffs. That's, to me, will be an interesting story to watch this season.
I give you that.
Yeah. And then maybe last but not least, I think we're going to skip the surprises and disappointments, which we did last year. We're too far gone in this one. But we did get a question from our pals at the 3rd Division. Important lessons for D3 football creators to sustain themselves in the long term. Oh boy, that's a loaded question.
Okay, let's go.
Good night, folks.
Yeah. Well, we'll see you later. Oh wait, you're back?
Yeah.
No, listen. Okay, first things first. I think we got into a feeding frenzy this summer of trying really, really hard to monetize and get content out that just began to scrape the bottom of the barrel to a point that it got a little uncomfortable for people used to the D3 landscape. So, first things first, everybody, take the summer off until we get to the point where the first poll comes out and camps are going to be getting open. There's no need to kill yourself. You're going to burn out yourselves.
Yeah.
There's
a reason why we've been doing this for 18 seasons and we're still hanging in there. I mean, it's a grind.
Yeah, you have a life, go live it a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, the student athletes are doing that. Hitting the gym, sure, and everything else.
Yeah.
But calm down, everybody. Seriously, calm down on the content. It's not, look, I enjoy good content as much as the next guy.
Sure.
But when we're talking about the tailgates, foods, and Miller Lite, and this and that, I think we really have reached a point at that time that you just, what's going on? Okay, I'm getting interviewed by Seth over at Left Half Call, and Kobe's getting interviewed by, it's like, we're trying way too hard to get content. I have no business being interviewed by anybody. I do it just to say yes to help people out. I think you do the same
thing a few times. Sure.
Matt Noonan's show used to be with him quite often on Noontime Sports.
Yeah.
Wait for the hard stuff. Get the student athletes in front of everybody. Don't worry so much about the coaches. They like to be out there, sure, but they'll have their opportunities too. So that's first off. Focus on the student athletes. That's going to be what the bread and butter is here.
Number one.
Yep. This is what differentiated us with D3 football to a certain degree, and we are not shy about that. We pick student athletes first to interview. Yes, when I go on the road, we'll always have a coach interview. Yeah. At the end of the interviews, we always bring the players first, pretty much, on those interviews, because those are the ones that we lose every 4 years, no matter what. Okay.
Yeah.
So focus on the student athletes. Stop focusing on some of the really extraneous stuff out there that doesn't necessarily put the emphasis on what we should be doing. They're playing it for the love of the game. They're not going to pros most likely, except for maybe 1 or 2 or 3, depending on what you call pros legitimately now.
Yeah.
Focus there. Also, I think respect the subject matter you're talking about. 3rd Division, I'll be fair here, went over the top on certain topics way too often. And we've talked to him about it. We've tried to help set an example for him. Some of his own staff have stepped up and said, stop doing it.
Cut it out.
Yep. And he's, I think, put out better content lately as a result of it,
Yeah.
and that's, kudos to him. But I think you really have to not try to sort of take it out to the walk the plank mentality of how far are you going to go before you fall off the edge of the cliff on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Respect the subject matter. Stop talking about the GPAs. Stop talking about things that are going to sort of be like that edgy crap.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of stories to talk about out there in Division III when we get to the season, especially because the players make it happen. 25,000 of them, I always say it. And if you're looking to be the entertainer first, be the broadcaster first. We can entertain in a cold open. Just try to take things seriously, and then the ancillary benefit of maybe a couple laughs here and there, that's great. Don't take yourself so seriously as that guy. What are some of your thoughts on the advice to give to people as we leave here in this show?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with the student athlete focus. I mean, they're the ones that are busting their butts on the field and playing these games that we watch all the time, and putting their bodies on the line for their friends and their families and their schools and coaches. I think I know that there's been we've had some social media back and forth. Some of which I think, for us was, just trying to kind of set some people straight on, what really matters here.
Well, if you're doing this for the money, you're in the wrong division.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
I'm all for people trying to, make a few dollars.
Yeah.
But this ain't going to be it.
Yeah, and I also think, you can have like maybe a disagreement or whatever, and then just leave it. But for people who just keep coming back and want to keep starting fights and going low and doing, that there's no place for people like that in this world. We've even had players, who are, who've seen, their fans out there, and they're like, these guys are, what holes, and we have nothing to do with them. They have nothing to do with us. They're their own thing. They can, So I would like to move away from that. I've unfollowed some people that I just feel like
I've blocked them outright somewhere.
Yeah, and I've done that too, just because I don't think they bring anything to bear. I know we've been accused of being gatekeepers, and while that has a negative connotation in some respects, there's a part of me that's like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and I really care about this thing. And if you're going to be a pain in the and they're going to talk this and put stuff out there that's trying to insult, degrade, and talk negatively, then you don't belong in this division.
Little do people know that behind the scenes, we're asked frequently for different advice on technical stuff, on content stuff generally, and stuff like that. And we don't refuse to answer those questions. We are brutally honest. That is what we do, because I'm not going to blow smoke up your butt on it's something I'm asked. And, I don't want to see people fail because we did that ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, this is our 432nd episode, and we've screwed up a lot over the last 431.
We did it in this one too,
yeah,
I'm sure.
So I mean, we try to teach people from our mistakes, and as we continue to make them along the way, we try to learn from them too. Like, we're not saying that we're perfect, but
or I forget Bryson Rollins' name during a Maryville discussion earlier or something like that, and I didn't look, folks. It finally came to me. But you try to remember 25,000 different names. It's something else. But no, all kidding aside, there is plenty of space. There's plenty of stuff that we can do. But I think when we try to go into the feeding frenzy and get so pent up on this is a business for me, or this is my monetization,
that's not it. You're in the wrong space.
D3Football.com should be the most valuable thing in this space because of the data that they provide.
And it wouldn't be valued by any investor would look at it. It might be worth a couple of $1,000 tops. It's not really.
But he went to a Patreon model for a reason.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
And
I'm glad that it's still out there, because I look at it all the time, and I appreciate what Pat has done, and I've been.
But if he can't make it that as a business success to that degree, how is some of the content that's out there as the business model stuff going to do it? When people come to me, I'm not giving business advice. If I was giving business advice, as I always say, my business advice would be don't do it. Okay?
Get a real job.
Yeah, this ain't
We
gonna
both
do it.
have one, by the way. Yeah.
Unless this is a passion or you want to be a broadcaster and this is your way to sort of get yourself out there,
Sure.
this ain't it. So there you go. There's our advice ultimately. But the last positive thing,
take it or leave it.
Yeah, the positive thing is you're valuable in the space as long as you realize the real value in the space is the student athletes. Just to go back to the number one point, I want to underscore that 110%. It's the student athletes. Coaches will tell you the same. The coaches like us because we go out and take care of those student athletes in the interviews and seek them out and make sure that they're comfortable in front of us at all times. The dog's barking. We've got to go. Regions 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and then 5 and 6 in 3 separate episodes coming up. So be ready for that. Coming to kickoff, we're going to have 3 games, one on Thursday, one on Friday, one on Saturday that will come to you from, and it's going to be a busy first week of the season, to say the least. JB, good to be back.
Good to be back. We'll see you.
We'll see you.